Hi everyone, welcome back to the Desiertalks. I'm your host Demis, and I'm joined here today by model.
My name is Leslie Monroy. I'm 25 years old. I'm a model and pageant contestant.
Awesome. So yeah, we're joined here by a super serious model, guys. And the reason I say that is because Leslie, on your bio, you have the words Miss Heart of Texas, USA, right? What does that
Yes, I
mean?
do.
If you don't mind explaining that for everyone.
Yeah, of course. So I've been doing pageants for about 2 years now. The goal is, get the crown for Miss El Paso. But this past year, I competed for Miss El Paso for the second time.
Mm-hmm.
And Jackie, our director, was kind enough to take our top five to Miss Texas USA. So as default, we did get titles for the entire year. So we'll be making appearances. We're officially title holders with Bazaar, just not as Miss El Paso.
Interesting. So if I'm understanding it right, because I've been doing this photography thing for 5 years. I've worked with all kinds of models. There's different levels to the pageant system, right?
Yes, there is. So there's a lot of different systems too. When you start doing pageantry, you really have to drill down on what kind of system you want to be part of.
Mm-hmm.
The US system was essentially the one that'll take you to, of course, Miss USA and eventually lead you to Miss Universe, which is the goal for a lot of girls.
Right.
But for Miss Texas USA, so you'll start at a local level, which is Miss El Paso. Then you'll go to Miss Texas USA. And then from Miss Texas USA, you go to Miss USA. So it's tough competition. Southern girls and Texas girls are no joke.
Gotcha. And do you say that in like a competitive type of way, or how is the competition, so to speak?
Yeah, so when you first get to pageants, when you first start experiencing it, there is a lot of sisterhood. I will say pageantry is essentially what kind of brought me out of my shell. I got to know so many girls that were so inspiring. I always tell people before I started doing pageants, I wasn't going to school,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't doing much in that aspect, right? When I started doing pageants, you see all these girls that are really focused and honestly really accomplished. So you just want to get to that level, right? So
Right.
it's a bit intimidating in that aspect, but that's what I mean. A lot of people think in pageantry is you have to look the best. No, it's really not about that. Most of the time, your interview is what scores you the most. So my one of my directors always tells us you can wholeheartedly win a pageant in interview. So your speaking skills, the way that you present yourself and what you do for your community are probably top priority for pageants.
That's pretty interesting. So going deeper into that, like what is the interview process like then? How was it for you?
So most pageants, and speaking from experience, I've done about four, and you get three minutes only, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really you really have to practice as far as not letting the nerves get to you because for a lot of us, and it's very natural, once you start talking and you get nervous, everything just kind of goes out the
Oh,
window,
for sure.
right?
Like you're on the point,
So it
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a lot of practicing, especially because you only have 3 minutes. Believe it or not, those go like this.
Wow,
A lot
really?
of us, yeah, and you still have to be able to introduce yourself, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these judges, you've never met them in your life before, so you have to do a good job of not only introducing yourself, but also what you represent.
I see. So it's kind of just like this is who I am, almost like a job interview in a way. Like trying
Yeah,
to win them
pretty
over.
much. And yeah, they really tell you don't think about it as anything because most of us get most nervous for interview. But they really tell you don't think about it as somebody who's judging you because of course it is a scored interview.
For sure.
But really think about it as a conversation, right? You really just want to tell them what you're all about.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. So what do you usually say in an interview? Like what's the kind of your go-to response?
So for me, I always like to talk about my history, right? I wasn't originally from here. I
Mm-hmm.
I was born here, but I lived in Juarez up until I was 10 years old. So my first language is Spanish, and for me that came with a lot of challenges. So that developed a lot of issues with my mental health. And I didn't get diagnosed until later on in life. And so for me, that's a very big thing within my, not just my community, but within my age group, right? A lot of us tend to overlook that
For sure.
um, because you obviously talk about self-care and everything you need to do to take care of yourself, but you really don't talk about the raw aspect. I lost a lot of hair, I got a lot of acne, lost a lot of weight. So I base my platform on my experiences, and that's what I like to talk about in my interview.
Right, and it's interesting what you said right there, because I feel like a lot of times, especially with like social media, like me being a photographer, you being a model, it's all about like appearances in a way. I try to come off as like professional. Oh, here's the best of the best from what I took. Same with you as a model. Like, oh, these are like the shoots that I did. This is the best of the best from that. But no one really talks about the process to get there, like what it takes. So it's good that you're highlighting that at the very least, because on your bio it also said mental health advocate, right?
Yeah, so and it comes into play in a lot of aspects in my life, especially when I first started modeling. I started modeling before I started doing pageantry, and I'm petite. I'm 4'11". For anybody that doesn't know me, when I book jobs, even sometimes, and they see me, they have outfits for me. They're like, "Oh, I didn't realize how tiny you were." I'm like, "Yeah." But it came with a lot of challenges, right? At the beginning, I was really insecure and I didn't book a lot of runways. And for me, I found for the most part, it came down to how I presented myself with confidence. So
For sure.
at the beginning, I was very aware of it. I was like, no, I'm short. I have tattoos. They're not going to want to book me. So that would show when I would walk. Of course, I wouldn't get booked.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, where you work a little bit more, and honestly, in the modeling industry, at least where I'm at with Bazaar Models, it's really uplifting. A lot of the girls, they're not the tallest either, so they're very encouraging, and my directors have been wholeheartedly so supportive throughout these past 2 years. So it is a lot of challenges to overcome, but it's very rewarding.
That's good to hear. I feel like in one of the interviews that I did in the past week, one of the models mentioned how she kind of struggled a bit with, modeling, pageantry, all of that, because they are looking kind of like for the stereotypical, like, tall, slim girl, But hearing the success that you've had and like what you learned from it, I think that's very inspiring for other models that are trying to do the same. So, as you said yourself, that you started modeling before pageantry, what got you into pageantry in the first place? Like, what was the day that you decided to do what you do now?
So that's so interesting. When I first started doing pageantry, I was approached by one of my directors, Illy, and she mentioned Miss El Paso Academy to me. And at the time, I was at a very low point in my life mentally. And I told her, I said, I first don't feel like I have the body type for the competition because, like you said, they are very stereotypical at the beginning.
For sure.
Or so you, right? Like,
it's the stigma.
All girls, yeah, it's that stigma that you're kind of seen in a pattern, well, at least in the past, right? And I told her no. She said, look, the academy that we present, it's basically just an empowering women academy. You're gonna get to do a lot of things throughout the year, improve your skills in speaking, get connections. I wanted to model as well, so she said, we'll help you out with photo shoots.
Right.
So I was like, you know what, okay, I'll sign up for the academy. I don't know that I'll compete at the end of the year, but we'll think about it, right? So I started interacting with a lot of the girls that were going to compete for Miss El Paso, and I made a lot of really strong connections with the girls. A lot of them encouraged me to go back to school. That's essentially when I made the decision to go back to school. And at that point, I started using exercise as kind of a mind freer for me, right? And it all kind of came together for me. When I first made the decision to do pageantry, I very much had that in my head as well. I'm short, I have tattoos, I'm probably not exactly what they're looking for. And my first pageant, I didn't have enough experience, and I will say it was very intimidating.
For sure, I feel like it would be for anyone.
Yeah, and a lot of the girls shy away from that, right? That's a kind of a turning point in pageantry. So you decide whether or not you really want to set your mind to it and go full in this, or if maybe this is for you.
Right.
And for me, I like a challenge. I love a challenge, and I don't like being told you can't do that, because I will show you I can.
Yeah.
So my second pageant that I competed, I did Miss Texas Earth, and I was the shortest contestant, and I was first runner-up. So I was the second place to the crown, and that was a, another point for me because the girl that had won, Sarah, she's amazing, Miss Sarah Sherwood. She'd been doing pageants for a while, and so for me, it was just kind of like, wow, dude, I'm at that level now. Like, I really can push myself to do anything that I really set my mind to, and so now it just developed this love for pageantry of challenging myself, of getting better and what I can do more, you know?
It's kind of like a wake up call in a way, being like, I had all these
Yeah.
doubts, but look at how far I made on like my first go. Like I think that's really amazing to hear for sure. So when you're up there at a pageant, like what is it like for people that don't go to pageants or don't know how it goes down? Like what do you do besides the interview? Like when you're up on the stage, how does it go down?
Yeah, so normally the show will start. They'll introduce the host, they'll introduce the contestants. So you'll go up on the mic, you get the famous moment of yelling your name and yelling the title that you're presenting. And then we'll go straight into, sometimes they'll have an opening number show, sometimes they won't, which means the contestants learn a dance, we get to perform. That's a fun dance. And then we'll go straight into competition, right? So we'll do a walk swimwear, which swimwear is for minutes, and it's scored based on fitness, right, and confidence. So they don't really care what your swim looks like. They don't care. I mean, of course, care that you look presentable, your makeup and stuff, but it's more of the performance that you put out there, how confident you look, and how that makes you go stage, right? And then you get a second competition for evening wear. So that one, you'll get scored again on technique, confidence, and then after evening wear, you'll go into questions. So that's where a lot of the girls, me personally as well, get really, really nervous because when you first do interview, it's judges and you. It's just the room with you and the judges. But when you go into top 5 questions, you're getting asked more controversial questions in front of everybody.
Right.
So, yeah.
I can imagine that has to be pretty nerve-wracking for sure. It's more of a spotlight on you. I feel like you're also trying to like be yourself, but at the same time putting on a persona in a sense of like, oh, this is how confident I am. This is how I talk. So I bet it's a lot to handle all at once. But again, like kudos to you for going as far as you have. There's other models that I've worked with in the past that do the whole pageantry thing, and one of them mentioned that there's a point where you have to like kind of give up the title to someone else. How does that usually go down?
So that would essentially be if you win, right? Only if you win. So whoever wins, they'll get their reign for a full year. They'll get to do appearances, whatever. They go based off their platform, right? And at the end of the year, the next competition for Miss El Paso, they get to give up their crown. So they'll have a farewell. They'll get to walk the stage. They pre-record a cast almost of how their reign went, who they're thankful for, and kind of like it's honestly really nice to watch.
So it's like a whole ceremony, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of like a ceremony for them to give up their crown in that same pageant, and then she will be the one to crown the next Miss El Paso. Well, at least.
So, in your case, how you started modeling not too long ago, how has that journey been for you? Like, I want to know about like who you've been working with, what types of shoots you mostly do. For anyone that's like watching this that doesn't know who you are by any sense,
Yeah, of course. So yeah, like you said, I haven't been doing it for too long. I think for most of my time has kind of been centered towards pageantry, but I do love to do fashion shoots. Most of my work does include, runway with evening wear for the most part. I love to model long dresses. I do love to do shoots for brands here and there. I've done sportswear. I've done high fashion, but it's mostly, how do I see it? Shoots are mostly fashion based. I don't really do collaborations anymore. I think something that I learned very early on, with some photographers, unfortunately, I had the experience that they would be getting paid for shoots and we wouldn't know as models. So we would kind of be volunteering our time, and we were just kind of like, oh dude, like I didn't know. So now it's just kind of being more mindful of that. I do love to do collaborations still here and there if it's a creative shoot. I love creative work. But other than that, it's mostly photo shoots and runway.
Yeah, I get you. So in a way, like your own experiences, you've kind of learned what to be aware of, like how to be more of a model that you want to be. You know, it's funny that you bring up the creative collaborative shoots because we met at a creative collaborative shoot at the Wet n Wild one here in El Paso. So aside from that one, like what other creative collaborative shoots have you done that come to mind that are notable for you?
So I've done a couple actually with Rubio's photography. We've done one vintage car shoots, and then we did one that's one of my favorites still that I've done. It was a paint photo shoot. Just paint all over my body.
Oh, body paint work, nice.
Yeah, it was more creative work. I also did one with Francisco. We went out to Hueco Tanks. It was one of my favorite shoots because he had I had met him at work actually. I was serving at the time. And he had approached me. He told me he was a photographer. And I'd never done a photo shoot with my natural hair. I have very curly hair. And usually with modeling and pageantry, it's very straight hair, big hair, curly hair.
And that's just what they look for.
Yeah, so I never really got to do any photo shoots in my natural hair. And when Francisco approached me, I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to shoot on my natural hair. He was like, dude, let's do it. We came up with some really clean work. That's probably one of my favorite shoots to date.
But let's kind of flip it on its head now. So what's like a challenging shoot that you can think of? Not so much like your least favorite, though it could kind of be in that same line, right? But like what's a shoot that like kind of made you push yourself maybe out of your comfort zone? What can you tell me about that?
I'd actually say, I'm like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'd actually say it's gonna be the one in Wet n Wild. I'm telling you, before that, I wasn't really doing any photo shoots. I didn't really feel comfortable showing my body. I wasn't going to the gym before, and when I'm going mentally, it reflects on my body 100%. So whether I lose the weight, bring up the weight, and at that time, I remember I had been working really hard in the gym. I've been going to Get Fit. They've been sponsoring me. Thank you to
nice.
them as well. And it was the first time that I finally felt like, you know what? I've been working in this for a while. Let's do it. And then so we went on to do the promo video before, and then the actual photo shoot at Wet n Wild. I actually think I got there so late that day because I was debating whether or not to go.
No, and I don't blame you for that at all. It's definitely one, out of your comfort zone, two, nerve-wracking being in the swimwear, and three, like again, it wasn't just you and me shooting. It was like you and like any other photographer that like came up to ask for photos. So it definitely was a lot to take in that day for sure.
Yeah, but thankfully I was accompanied by my friend Denise, so we were able to get some really clean work.
So you bring up your friend Denise. Are there other, is she a model as well? And like in your own community that you have built for yourself here in El Paso, like what are other models that you work with or are friends with? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so Denise is actually one of the first models that I met. I met her at one of the jobs that I was hired to do. And she's a personal trainer. So when I became friends with her, I first started doing pageantry, and she was like, hey, so we can work together. She's essentially a big reason why I was able to get in the shape that I was able to.
Right.
Was able to help me not just with fitness, but with meal plans. She was a friend to me. She was there for me when I really didn't want to show up. And she's a model, so she's an independent model. She's done a lot of work for commercial, for restaurants, different brands like eyewear, things like that. Another one that has really, really helped me is Itzel. Her name's Itzel Valverde. She's also an independent model, but she's actually younger than me, and she's out modeling in Chicago. She's out doing her things. Yeah, she travels. And she's really the one that gets me a lot of opportunities. She trained me for runway for a lot of my competitions, and thanks to her, I was able to get a lot of sponsors as well. So she's one of the people that I really look up to.
And how did the whole sponsorship thing go down for you as a runway model? Like, do they approach you? Do you approach them? What do you have to do in turn?
So for sponsors, it's mostly you approaching them. You really have to put yourself out there because a lot of these brands, you have to understand they've done a lot of work in marketing. So you really have to know what you can bring to the table for them.
Hmm.
Um, it's a collaborative work, right? So usually for me, I like to approach them already with a plan like, hey, this is what I need. This is what I can help you with.
Right.
And please let me know if we can work together, right? If it's something that'll work for you, if you want to talk it out. Usually I do like to go in person. A lot of these businesses, if you reach out to them in email, they'll just kind of get overlooked. So
It's kind
you
of
have
just
to
like
put,
you putting your foot forward for this to work out the way that it does.
yeah, and you really have to be prepared for a lot of, they say rejections, redirection, but a lot of people are really not willing to do monetary. I've had a lot of sponsors who will be willing to work with me for other services like
Hmm.
hair, nails, fitness, things like that. But they won't be willing to do monetary, right? Which is really what a lot of us need. Because full disclosure, a lot of the fees for pageantry are so expensive.
So that's coming out of your
Thousands.
own pocket. Even though you have the title and everything, you still have to be the one to be paying in that aspect.
Yeah, so if you do a local, of course everything's gonna come out of your own pocket unless
For
you have
sure.
sponsors. And then if you win locally, you do get a lot of things paid for going into Texas, USA, but of course you do still have to pay for some things. So not everything's free. No.
Yeah, that's kind of like the harsh reality, in a way, from what I'm
Yeah.
getting from that. In your opinion, like,
Yeah.
why do you think there is, I guess for lack of a better word, the disconnect with sponsors? With like, oh, well, we'll help you with this, but money, like, we'll kind of shy away from that. Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of people, uh, for example, let's say a makeup artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Had some people that have reached out to me willing to do, sponsorships for makeup, and I see as for them, it helps them a little bit more because once you do a pageant girl's makeup and another one likes it, they're gonna start running their mouth. So it
For
really
sure.
does bring a lot of business. I remember the day of Miss El Paso, my hair artist, it didn't come through.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the girls was like, hey, so this is my hair artist, this is my makeup artist. If you need anything, let her know. She'll squeeze you in. So really, it's a lot of word of mouth. And I think for them, that's more worth it versus if I go to a restaurant and ask them, hey, I need monetary, sponsorships. But a lot of these girls, they're not, they might think about the restaurant, but they're not really gonna go there, like if it's not within their lifestyle.
For
But
sure.
hair makeup artists, nails, we all know we're there, it's something
Mm-hmm.
that it's kind of asked of us. So we know the consumer is already there.
So it's kind of just kind of go wherever you best fit into. In your case, at least, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that like, I mean, again, going back to like how far you've made it, like obviously like it's been working out good for you, and I see all the opportunities that you've gotten from the modeling that you do now. On your story today, you posted that you're doing a fitting, right? What is that
Yes.
for? If you could kind of go into that, and also how do fittings work for those that don't know.
Yeah, of course. So fittings, you'll go to fittings once you actually book the job.
Mm-hmm.
This one was particularly a paid job, and it's gonna be for a kitty cafe. It's gonna be kind of an anime convention. It's the first time ever that Bazaar works with anime conventions, so I'm pretty excited. We're eventually gonna dress up, be at the convention, take pictures, present the booth to any comics that are there. And it was a really good opportunity because this is the first time that they're gonna do well. It's the first time that Bazaar is gonna do it with them, and the person that's doing it, he's from Kitty Cafe Co.
Uh-huh.
He does a lot of conventions all around, so he does a couple in California, and he was telling us, I would really love to, if if it works out, I would really like to keep working with the same model. So that
Mm-hmm.
builds up rapport with these kind of companies, and you get those opportunities back. And now maybe eventually you get to travel with some of these companies.
For
So
sure.
I'm really excited. It's the first time that we do it. It's gonna be in June. I believe it's June 14th. So
Anime
if anybody,
Mundo or something like that, right? Anime Fest, one of the
yeah,
two. Yeah,
yeah.
it's really exciting. So, from what I'm getting from this is like the at your higher level of modeling, for again, lack of a better word, right? It kind of comes down to like you do more promo, more, high fashion stuff like that, and they come to you and they're like, okay, who wants to do this? And that's how you get into the whole fitting situation, right? If I understood that correctly.
So kind of. So the way it works, because I am with an agency. If you're independent, it works a little bit differently. But I am with an agency, so my agency will get different jobs getting reached out to them,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll present our portfolios to these clients, and then the clients will go based off of those portfolios, right? They'll of course want to meet in person, so that's what I was doing today.
Mm-hmm.
First, it was a meeting to make sure that it was going to work out, that it was a fit, and then from there we go on to fittings. Luckily, he already had everything there, so I didn't have to go back for another fitting.
Right.
But essentially, yeah, your portfolios get sent out, you get picked, and then from there they'll contact you. They'll ask you if you're available first and foremost, if you're willing to do it, because a lot of these girls are not willing to do some of these type of jobs.
Right.
For instance, we used to do a golf tournament in Coronado Country Club,
Mm-hmm.
and that involved serving alcohol. So a lot of girls are minors, they can't do that, or a lot of
Right.
these girls do ABC license, so they'll shy away from those type of jobs. But yeah, from there you'll get scheduled a fitting, and then you'll eventually get info for the job, and
So
that's
it's
it.
really like a job interview in a way, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. Except your kind of is your portfolio. So.
Yeah, I could totally see that. You keep bringing up your agency and like your agent, all this, your director. When you started modeling, were you always with an agency, or were you kind of just doing it freelance at first? Because, in my sense, like as a photographer, like I started off and have been freelance. It was just me reaching out to people. That's how I got into like the communities. I got to work with people, network. So how was it for you? Like right off the bat, were you like, oh, let me go right into Bazaar, or did you try it out on your own at first?
No, I actually never really tried modeling before. I followed Bazaar's page on Instagram, started looking at a lot of their work, and then eventually they had reached out to me. I had a meeting with one of their managers at Bazaar,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I really got into it. I actually, when I first signed, I took a couple, because they have classes every Sunday.
Right.
So I took a couple of classes before I even did my first photo shoot, because that's your first portfolio shoot that they'll put out on the website. And I was like, no, I am not going to put out any pictures that I don't feel ready for. So they actually do encourage you to do that, to take a couple of classes before you actually do your first photo shoot.
I see, and that's mostly just to kind of like make yourself more presentable, or is it what is the purpose of like that?
So they'll teach you tips and tricks, right? And I'm sure as a photographer, it's a lot of us as new models, we want to go from like drastic, like here to down here. And I know it's hard on camera. So they kind of teach you how to communicate and work with your photographer, not go so drastic. If you want to do action shots, make sure you let them know. Like really be in sync to make sure you get your best results.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a lot of us are used to a lot of social media pictures. So we're used to Instagram posing.
Right.
And that's, of course, not at all what is modeling. It's so much different. So they teach you a lot of motion. They teach you a lot of angles with your face. Make sure that you don't get those white eyes in the picture when you're doing side shots. A lot of that kind of stuff.
One interesting thing that you just mentioned is you said that like modeling is not like Instagram posting. What do you mean by that? Can you go deeper into that?
Yeah, so even I'm guilty myself. When I'm doing my Instagram posts, sometimes I don't even really care what I look like. I'm looking at the background, or sometimes I want to really show off my dress, so I'll do a certain pose, like to show off my dress, or I'm feeling cute,
Right.
It's very different when you're doing modeling. You really have to, like I said, you really have to be in communication with your photographer, because you want to know what type of concept you're shooting for. If you're doing high fashion and you're smiling in the photos, it's gonna look awkward. So you really want to be in sync. And also with creative shoots, right? I really love the shoots that almost look like cinematic shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it looks very, very different, right? Like you're not necessarily just focused on the model. You're focused on the whole picture, right?
Mhm.
Like it's an image as a whole. Of course, we're part of it, but I always say what makes the best photo is communication with the photographer. If you're not in sync, you're not gonna get a good shot.
For sure. And what do you mean by in sync?
So I've had some experiences, I guess, when I was a new model and I was doing some of the photo shoots in studio. We would do portfolios, right? And we'd have different outfits. And because I was so new and some of these photographers didn't know that we were new models, would would take the shots and kind of just move on and go, and then when you would look back at them it would look so awkward because it's edited like a almost like a darker vibe, like a darker photo, more intense, and then you have the model smiling, so it's just kind of like
A clashing of
you need,
styles, if you will.
yeah, you're clashing with styles. So that's mostly what I've seen as far as my personal experience, where I get back photos and I'm like, oh no, I wish they would have told me,
Right, for sure.
or even then, like, I know it's silly, but there's times that I've had my hair a certain way in pictures that just looks bad, and they'll just keep shooting. And it's just kind of like, oh, I wish you would have told me that it looked awkward. But you do have a lot of photographers that are really mindful with that. And I've had other experiences where they will guide me through, like, hey, that pose is amazing, but it just doesn't look good on camera. How about we change it? So that's what I mean, just kind of communicating.
I get you. And it's interesting, with all the interviews that I've been doing, like learning the different styles that models have when it comes to their photo shoots. Because, again, I've been doing this for like 5 years. I've worked with some models that, not that they have control of the shoot, but they already are like, okay, I'm gonna pose like this. Oh, don't worry, I know my good side, I know this. But for you, it seems like you're more of you want direction, you want that like communication with the photographer, right? Have you always been that way?
Yeah.
Or was there like a certain point where you're like, I should be more serious about this. Let me anchor down, make this the way that I want my photo shoots to go. Like, how did that progression go for you?
Yeah, I think it really only took one time for me because I hate being embarrassed, and I felt so embarrassed after I got back those shoots. So after I had that experience and didn't really like the way the photos turned out, I really learned to just kind of not necessarily take control, but just put myself out there and be like, hey, if there's something that's really not working on camera, let me know. Or if there's something that you think that's gonna look better, let me know. Like, at the end of the day, especially with collaborations, because it's as much your work as it's mine.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, like with the level of modeling that you've achieved, has that affected in any way what type of photographers you choose to work with? Or are you still pretty open to collabing with whoever reaches out to you?
No, I'd say I'm actually still, I am a little bit more selective, but I am pretty open. I feel like as long as the concept is something, for example, I don't like repeating concepts. If it's something that I've already done before, I probably won't do it again.
Right.
But if I have a photographer that approaches me like, hey, I really want to do this, and I think it's something super creative, super dope, I'll do it.
Okay, so really it just takes like a good idea to get you going basically on board. Okay, I think that's really good to know. What is there any advice that you have for any models that are trying to start out in like the pageant world? Like, what can you say about that?
Yeah, I think it's really just as cheesy as it sounds, and I know they tell you over and over again, but it's knowing your worth in the modeling industry and really standing for it, because like I said, you at the beginning you do have to put yourself out there. You do want to do collaborations and do different types of photo shoots, but at the end of the day, you do have to decide what type of model you want to be. They always tell you social media is always going to be forever, and if you ever do a photo shoot that you're really not comfortable with, it's going to be out there forever. And it's just really knowing what type of model you want to be, standing your ground. And once you really gain experience, standing your ground as well, because I've heard of a lot of agencies, and it's happened to some of my friends, where they get underpaid or they get lied to. And you really just have to be careful with what type of agency you sign with. Fortunately, I've never had that experience.
That's good.
But yeah, just really, really take care of yourself.
And what are some like telltale signs that like an agency is trying to screw you over, in a sense?
Honestly, it's kind of hard, but it just kind of comes down to the job, right? Like, I've had some of my friends get flown out to do jobs, and then they get promised a certain pay, and because modeling is not like you're on a what do you call it? Payroll. Yeah, you're not payroll, right? So it's a little bit harder, and they get underpaid or they never get paid. They get back in town, they never get paid for those jobs. So I personally wouldn't work with an agency that I don't know. How do I say this? If you do your research, you will know. A lot of the models, they really do a good job of putting themselves out there when they have these experiences. And they paint it really sweet to you. That's the thing. That's why I say always be really careful. When you first sign with an agency, they give you all this sweet talk basically and all these benefits that you'll get when really you don't. Or for example, there's agencies that will charge you to get signed onto the agency, and then they'll promise that they'll book you jobs, so you get paid that back, but they don't really book you jobs. So you have to do it all on your own. So it's just kind of do your research. It's really do your research, because it's out there. A lot of these agencies, they get blasted for doing it. So really just do your research.
In some ways, it's like too good to be true in some cases, is what you're trying to say as well, right?
Yeah, especially if you're a newer model. If you have somebody that's reaching out to you promising to do runways and photo shoots and paid things, it's honestly, from my experience here locally, really hard to book a runway that's paid. So really just be mindful of that.
And why do you think that is, though? Is it just because it's El Paso, and El Paso already has that like habit of like people are going to try to cut costs whenever they can, or is it something else entirely?
I think it's a mix of it. I think a lot of people unfortunately do take advantage of it, especially with the newer models that know that they really want to put themselves out there. I have had some experiences here where I do get paid for runways, so it's really up to you, I also have worked, for example, with Samara's Couture. Samara's Couture is amazing. They were one of the first to really have me on their runways, but they have also helped me out with some of my pageant wardrobes. So they've been amazing. It's really a relationship that you have to take care of, because where you water it is where it'll be.
And you know what? I really like that last thing that you said, because the through line that I'm getting from all these interviews that I'm doing is that it really just comes down to like your support that you find that helps take you to the next level. So it's awesome hearing that, like, the other models that I've interviewed have that, you have that as well, and it's going good for you in the end,
Yeah. The I always say the grass is greener where you water it.
Nice. Imagine that like in little text just popping up, there you go, a little sparkle effect. But one of the last things that I want to talk about real quick is, in your opinion, like, what does it mean to be a model? And the reason why I ask that is because I've met a bunch of people doing this while the whole photography journey, right? And I've worked with people like you that do runway pageantry. I've worked with other people that call themselves models, but it's mostly just like, oh, let me just do this one shoot, or let me just do photos in lingerie to get the likes, which again, nothing wrong with that at all. But for you, is there like a line on what it means to be a model, or is it just an all-encompassing term in your eyes?
No, I think so. I think there is a line. I think a lot of people do photo shoots for fun, which doesn't take away from it. Like you said, it's whatever you want to do. But for me, it's those people that really kind of want to take it a little bit a step further.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want to start getting paid for it, if you do see that many of us, for example, for me, I do see a career in modeling, but I also want to be in marketing. So it's kind of a side gig for me.
For
But it's
sure.
really if you're serious about it, right? If you really put in the work to get better, to do more runways, to put yourself out there, because it is also kind of hard to manage as a model that type of time frame.
For
A
sure.
lot of us, we don't do this full time. Most of us actually don't do this full time.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have an overnight job, so it's making the time and dedication to be there for those dreams that you have, and I think that's where I really draw the line, right?
Yeah, for sure. Kind of like the commitment that you're willing to put in, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Very nice.
Yes.
So, as we close out the show, is there anything that you want to plug about yourself? Anything that you want to say? The floor is yours for like the very last part.
Well, if you guys want to follow me, my Instagram is at Leslie Monroy _. I do also want to shout out my agency and Ivy Pasarela. They've been really my backbone on the modeling industry. If you do want to get started, I suggest you guys check them out. They do classes for modelings on Sundays at Bazaar, and Itzel, my very dear friend, she does classes on Mondays as well. So if you ever want to get started, just take a class, kind of feel it out, see if it's for you. You never really know what it can lead to.
For sure. Well, you know what? In that case, I feel like I've gotten a lot of insight from what it means to be a pro level model from you. So I want to thank you so much for coming on here, giving me your time today. My name is Zimis. Thank you guys for joining us again for the Desiertalks. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Adios.